girlfriend lied and went to an event she wanted to go to without me. I'm not going to start out with the whole our relationship is perfect, but thing that you always see on here. I'll admit this has been one of the hardest relationships I've been in. I still very much love her. She's beautiful, strong, driven, successful, and independent. She has an amazing mind and an incredible ability to overcome challenges which I deeply admire. However, I am 30-year-old and my girlfriend is 28-year-old. She is a dismissive-avoidant to the extreme, and it's been causing a lot of issues in our relationship. She has a tendency to retreat emotionally, especially when things get tough or uncomfortable, and that pattern has made it difficult to build the level of intimacy and connection I know we're both capable of achieving. She's in therapy, but that is mostly focusing on managing her OCD and related eating disorder. These are issues that understandably take a lot of her mental and emotional energy. Fun fact, all three issues, OCD, eating disorders, and dismissive-avoidant attachment styles, are often comorbid, which adds layers of complexity to what we're working through together. She has significant difficulty expressing her emotions and needs, which often leaves me feeling unsure of how to support her. She struggles with communication, commitment, and compromise, which are foundational aspects of any healthy relationship. It's not that she doesn't want to be close or connected, it's that she doesn't know how to navigate those feelings without fear or discomfort. We've been dating for a little over a year and I've seen a lot of her growth in that time. Prior to me, her longest relationship was less than 2 months. She usually shuts down and runs from relationships if she feels smothered, if her partner lets her down, or if she feels like she's being criticized. It doesn't take much for this to happen because she's so highly sensitive to any perceived pressure or judgment. These are deeply ingrained habits and fears, rooted in past experiences that I know she's working hard to unpack and understand. She does recognize this pattern and she's trying to work on it, which is something I deeply respect and appreciate about her. Still, it's hard on us both. I want to be there for her, to support her through this journey, but it's challenging when the very things she's trying to protect herself from, closeness, dependency, vulnerability, are what I crave in a relationship. Her fear of being smothered or let down often means she keeps me at arm's length, even when I feel like all I want to do is reassure her that I'm here for the long haul. At times, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, trying not to inadvertently trigger her fear or push her away. Yet I stay because I see the potential in her, in us, and in what we're building together. Our relationship is far from perfect, and it's taken a lot of patience and understanding from both sides. I've had to learn to temper my expectations and recognize that her growth is a process, not a quick fix. She's had to confront the walls she's built around herself and acknowledge how those walls have impacted the people who care about her. It's not easy for either of us, but I truly believe in the connection we share and the possibility of a healthier, more balanced future. I love her deeply, and while I know the road ahead won't always be smooth, I'm willing to navigate it with her because she's worth it. Both of us are big theater nerds. A few months ago we had a trip to a city about 2 hours from us to visit her grandparents, and I got to meet her best friends from college for the first time. It was a meaningful trip for her and I felt honored to be included. While there, we went to a show with her friends and I honestly had a great time. Her grandparents love me and I got along really well with her friends. It felt like one of those moments that brought us closer, blending our lives in a way that felt natural and joyful. During the trip, I learned more about her world and it deepened my appreciation for her and the people who are important to her. There was another show coming up in a few months that both of us had connections to. It was the first musical she ever saw with her grandparents, which made it deeply sentimental for her, and I had worked on a production of the same musical in high school, so it held some nostalgic value for me as well. It seemed like a perfect opportunity to share something meaningful. I asked my girlfriend if we could go together and even offered to bring her grandparents along as a nice night out since they don't get to go out much anymore. Alternatively, I suggested we could go with her college friends. I wanted to create an experience that would be special for her and include the people she loves, but she immediately shut the idea down. She told me she didn't really like that show, which she had mentioned before, and said she didn't want to see it again. I was a little disappointed but figured it wasn't a big deal and I let it go. That show happened to be last weekend. The weekend itself was a bit rocky. On Saturday we had a minor fight because I was about 15 minutes late picking her up to hang out at a brewery. She felt let down and it hit her harder than I anticipated. She tends to be very sensitive to things like this, and I know she has broken up with others in the past for similar reasons. That day she gave me the silent treatment and it took a lot of effort to get her to open up. Eventually we both apologized and the evening ended on a decent note at home. Despite the initial tension, I thought we had moved past it and were back on track. The next morning she told me she wasn't feeling great and wanted to go home to rest. I offered to stay with her to take care of her or help out in any way she needed, but she said no. She just wanted a quiet day to herself. I respected her wishes, told her to let me know if she needed anything, and drove her home. For most of the day, I didn't hear from her, which was unusual. Even on her quieter days, we typically exchange memes or send Snapchats of our cats, keeping a light and playful connection. But this time she wasn't even opening my messages. Earlier that week, she had a severe migraine that landed her in the emergency room, and her sister had just had a baby who was dealing with health problems. Naturally, by late afternoon I started to worry that something might be wrong. Feeling concerned, I decided to check her location on Find My to make sure she was okay. To my surprise, she wasn't at home or even in our city. Instead, she was just leaving a restaurant and walking to the theater to see the show I had wanted to see. Based on the restaurant and the circumstances, I assumed she was with her friends. The restaurant is a favorite of theirs, and it's the kind of place where they would have needed a reservation. Given how popular the show is, it's clear that everything had been planned well in advance. I'm not worried about infidelity. Her friends are married to each other, and I trust her completely. My hurt comes from a different place. I'm deeply hurt by the situation. I wouldn't have minded if she had told me she already had plans to see the show with her friends. I would have understood and been okay with it. What bothers me is that she lied about not wanting to go, only to secretly attend the show without me. It feels like she didn't want to explain that she preferred to go with her friends and without me. That omission and the way she kept it hidden sting more than anything else. I don't know how to bring this up to her. She's extremely sensitive to criticism, and even though I'm hurt rather than angry, I know she might take it as an attack. She has a history of shutting down and withdrawing whenever I try to express my feelings, and I'm worried this could be one of those times. In the past, she has threatened to break up and leave during difficult conversations, even over much smaller issues. I fear that addressing this could push her to end things just to avoid dealing with the discomfort of the conversation. I care about her deeply and don't want to lose her, but I also can't keep this bottled up. It's eating away at me, and I need to find a way to communicate how I feel without scaring her off or making her retreat emotionally. You posted an update? I wanted to thank everyone for their input on my last post. I know it's a bit cliché, but I wasn't expecting it to gain so much attention. Even the harsher comments helped me see things more clearly and gave me a better grasp of the situation. I wasn't initially planning to post an update, but after receiving several messages asking about what happened, I figured I'd finally write it all out. Unfortunately, this story doesn't have a happy ending. For those who don't want to read the whole thing, there's a TLDR at the bottom, but fair warning, this is going to be a long one. After reading through the comments and reflecting deeply on what I wanted, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to approach the situation. I knew I needed to address my feelings, but I also understood how delicate things would be given her personality and history. I made my post on Monday and decided to wait until Wednesday when we already had a date planned to bring up the topic. I thought it would be best to talk in person during a moment when we were both relatively calm and relaxed. On Tuesday, however, things took an unexpected turn. She was having a bad day at work, though she didn't make it clear to me right away. She texted me about an email her boss, who is known for being difficult and unreasonable, had sent her. I read her message and thought my response was appropriately supportive and validating. I essentially agreed with her frustration, called her boss out for being an asshole, and let her know that her feelings were entirely justified. To my surprise, she replied curtly with, "Is that all you took from that?" I paused and reread her message to see if I had missed something important. Maybe she was looking for a different kind of support or was trying to express something deeper that I hadn't picked up on. I'll admit I should have taken more time to consider her perspective and craft a thoughtful reply, but I was swamped with my own work stress and battling a migraine at the time. Feeling overwhelmed, I lazily doubled down on my original response, again reiterating that she had every right to feel angry and frustrated. I thought I was being clear and supportive, but she didn't respond to my message. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed she might be busy or needed some space to cool off, so I waited for her to reach out when she was ready. As the hours passed, I started to feel uneasy about her silence. I decided to check in by sending her a message on Snapchat and another on Instagram, hoping she might respond there. She didn't open any of my messages on any platform. I felt increasingly uneasy but still tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. She had been busy and overwhelmed before, and I've always made excuses for her during times like these, so I assumed she'd get back to me when she had the time or energy. By the end of the day, though, her silence was deafening. It wasn't just that she wasn't responding to me, it was the fact that she wasn't even acknowledging my attempts to reach out. That night, I couldn't help but reflect on the many times I had bent over backward to accommodate her avoidant tendencies, often at the expense of my own emotional well-being. I tried to convince myself that she just needed space, but part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. If you couldn't tell from the first post, my girlfriend really struggles with communication. For hours after I last tried to reach out to her, she finally responded, saying that she doesn't feel emotionally supported and that she needs some space to think about the future of our relationship. Her response completely blindsided me. I was confused and asked what exactly was wrong, to which she replied, "I just had a really crappy day, and you didn't even bother to call me." At that point I kinda snapped. I've been trying so hard to be there for her, but her lack of clarity and communication makes it impossible to understand what she needs. I asked her why she didn't respond to any of my messages earlier, or better yet, why she didn't simply say something like, "Hey, I had a really bad day at work and need to hear your voice," or let me know what kind of support she was looking for. Her response was, "I didn't respond because it wouldn't have mattered. I cannot always be the one putting in the work." That response hit me hard. I've been bending over backward trying to make her feel safe and supported. I explained, for what felt like the 1000th time, that I'm not a mind reader. I told her that if she doesn't communicate her needs or feelings, I can't know what she's going through or how to help. It's like she's intentionally avoiding doing the emotional labor of articulating her needs, and instead she expects me to figure it out on my own. I tried to make it clear that I understand how hard it is for her to open up, but I also pointed out that refusing to communicate isn't a healthy solution. If she doesn't tell me what she's feeling or what she needs, it's unfair to expect me to anticipate her every emotional state. I also explained that from my perspective, her day sounded like the usual work stress she's mentioned before. If it was worse than that, she didn't communicate that to me at all. She never tried to clarify how she was feeling or let me know that she needed extra support. Instead, she acted out and gave me the silent treatment, leaving me in the dark. Her response was, "I've been saying I need more effort from you for months and nothing has changed. This is the exact argument I didn't want to have, and you pushed it." That felt incredibly unfair to me. I've put in so much effort trying to support her in every way I can. I told her again that I desperately want to support her and meet her needs, but she's not giving me anything to work with. When I've asked her directly what I can do to make her feel supported, she either shuts down or says vague things that don't give me any real direction. It's like no matter how much I try, I'm always falling short of her expectations because she refuses to tell me what those expectations are. At that point, I could see the conversation was going nowhere, and I didn't want to make things worse. I decided to give her the space she asked for. I told her I love her and that I'm here when she's ready to talk. Then I backed off and let her have her time to process everything. It's been emotionally draining to navigate this relationship. I love her deeply and I see so much potential for us to build something strong together. But it's incredibly difficult to keep trying to reach her when she continually puts up walls and refuses to let me in. I'm at a loss for how to make this work when the core issue seems to be her inability or unwillingness to communicate. I'm not ready to give up, but I'm feeling more and more like I'm fighting this battle alone. All I can do is hope that with time and space, she'll be willing to meet me halfway and that we can find a way forward together. The next morning she asks if she can come over after work to talk. After I confirm, she goes back to giving me the silent treatment. I soon found myself blocked on Snapchat and Instagram. Weirdly enough, it was this that finally made it click for me about how bad I'd been treated. I was so starved for emotional and non-sexual physical intimacy. She doesn't even like holding hands, let alone cuddling, and was an anxious mess from constantly walking on eggshells. But I'm stubborn. I loved her. I really wanted things to work and was still wanting to talk things out. She's pulled a similar stunt before and we ended up staying together. She finally came over and we began by addressing our communication issues. Her main point was that she believes with a truly compatible partner, everything should come naturally, including an intuitive understanding of when the other person needs something without them having to explicitly ask. She admitted that when she feels overwhelmed, she tends to shut down emotionally, which makes asking for help extremely difficult. It conflicts with her need to feel independent and self-sufficient and exacerbates her fear of falling into a toxic, codependent dynamic like the one her parents had. For her, these feelings justified her expectation that I should instinctively know how to support her without her needing to articulate her needs. I explained my perspective as calmly as I could, emphasizing that what she was asking was essentially for me to read her mind. I pointed out that this placed all of the emotional labor squarely on my shoulders, which was neither realistic nor fair. I acknowledged that while I understood how hard it was for her to communicate her feelings, a relationship required effort and compromise from both sides. If she couldn't open up about her needs, it became impossible for me to provide the support she was looking for. As I spoke, I could tell she was starting to feel uncomfortable with the conversation. True to form, she began changing the subject, which is her usual strategy when confronted with difficult topics. We ended up jumping around to various issues in our relationship, none of which we really resolved. At one point, seemingly out of nowhere, she said that she didn't feel like she truly knew me. Surprised, I asked her what she meant by that, and she explained that she never really knew what I was thinking or feeling and that I was too closed off. Her words hit me hard because they felt so untrue. I've always made an effort to be transparent with her about my thoughts and emotions. It also felt like projection on her part, given that she rarely shared her own feelings or thoughts with me. But what hurt the most was how her comment struck at a deep-seated insecurity I'd been struggling with, the fear that she didn't care enough about me to really get to know me. This insecurity wasn't baseless. She had shown little interest in my hobbies or passions, and the few times she asked me questions about myself, they were often negative or critical in tone. In contrast, I had gone out of my way to learn about the things she cared about, even when they weren't things I was particularly interested in. I invested time and energy into understanding her world because I loved her and wanted to feel closer to her. But in moments like this, it felt like that effort was unreciprocated, like I was the only one truly trying to bridge the gap between us. She then brought up that we've been dating for a year, but have no plans to move in together. Again, this hit on a major insecurity of mine. I had been trying to bring this up for months. I straight up asked her when she was having issues at her place and she was thinking about moving. This was late July around our 1-year anniversary. On the other hand, she gave me different answers every time I asked her what she wanted for her or our future, if she didn't try to change the subject instead. She's never brought up our future on her own, I always was the one to bring it up. I made it clear that the only reason we don't have future plans is because she doesn't seem to want to make them yet. I also said there is nothing wrong with that, but she needs to let me know if she's not ready for that step. Pointing all of this out to her made her go quiet. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes with giving the cold shoulder or the silent treatment. It was the quiet of someone withdrawing, of shutting down when things became too overwhelming. This was a pattern I'd seen before. It took her a few minutes to come out of it and I waited patiently. When she was ready to re-engage, I explained as calmly as I could that I felt like I was the only one putting consistent effort into our relationship. I wanted her to see how much I cared and how much I was trying, but also how that effort felt one-sided. She listened, then asked me what I seriously wanted. It was a fair question and I wanted to answer it honestly, but I think I fumbled the delivery. I began in a kind of roundabout way, trying to give her context from my perspective. I started explaining that 6 years ago, I had ended my engagement to my fiancée after she became an abusive alcoholic. That decision had been one of the hardest I'd ever made. The years that followed weren't any easier. I worked 80+ hours a week at a job I hated, all while watching my dad slowly succumb to a terminal illness. These were all things my girlfriend already knew about, but I wanted to lay the groundwork for what I was about to say, that after going through those years of pain and struggle, I had decided to rebuild my life. I wanted a job that was better for my mental health, which I'd successfully achieved, and I wanted to find my person, someone to share my life with. Before I could even get to the point, she cut me off. She said, almost offhandedly, that maybe I'd started dating too soon after my dad's passing. Her words caught me completely off guard. My dad had passed 9 months before we started dating, and I had spent that time grieving deeply, focusing on healing and getting my life back on track. Hearing her suggest that I hadn't taken enough time felt dismissive and misplaced, especially in the context of what I was trying to express. It threw me and I needed a moment to recover before I could continue. But before I could say anything, she spoke again. She said she didn't feel like our communication styles were compatible. That comment stung because of how one-sided our communication struggles felt to me. Trying to keep the conversation honest, I asked her if she genuinely believed she had good communication skills. Without missing a beat, she said that she felt she did. Her answer felt like a denial of reality. Here we were, in the middle of yet another conversation where I had to drag emotions and clarity out of her because she couldn't, or wouldn't, express her feelings directly. It was hard to reconcile her perception of herself as a good communicator with the repeated issues we'd faced in the relationship. I finally brought up the show. I said that I know that she went without me and I explained how I know, and my justification for looking up her location. This visibly shocked her and she shut down again. I asked why she lied to me twice. No answer. I asked if she was cheating on me. No, she went with her college friends. She eventually confirmed that this was planned before I even asked to go. As I suspected, she just said that she didn't want to go to avoid what she felt was an uncomfortable conversation. I asked her if she felt like this was okay. Yes, she was worried that if she told the truth I'd push her to let me go with them. I asked if I've ever tried to pressure her into doing something that she didn't want to do. Yes, I asked to watch movies that she doesn't like over and over. Again, a sore spot. I rarely got to pick what we watched, and she seems to intentionally avoid movies that are important to me. Over Christmas I asked to watch Home Alone to continue a tradition I had with my dad. I wanted her to be there with me for support. She refused and found every way to invalidate my feelings. I ever pressured her outside of asking to watch a few of my favorite movies? No. I asked her point blank if I had done anything to make her feel unsafe opening up to me about any of this. Her answer was also a no. She admitted that she's just not the type to open up like that to anyone except her sister. So I asked her how she expected to have a serious, committed relationship with someone if she couldn't share her feelings or thoughts with them. Her response was disheartening. She said she felt like the right person would just make it easy for her, without her needing to make any changes. This led me to ask another difficult question. Did she feel like she needed to work on herself to be a better partner? She answered no again, this time explaining that she didn't really want to be a partner anymore. That statement hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been bracing myself for some sort of acknowledgement or discussion about what we could do to improve things, but instead I got the sense that she had already checked out. She said our relationship had become a significant source of stress in her life, to the point where it was affecting her job and her recovery from her eating disorder. I struggled to understand how much of this was true. From what I could see, she had been doing well at work and her progress in recovery had been steady. But I didn't want to dismiss her feelings, so I asked where the stress in our relationship was coming from. Her answer was painfully clear. It was the constant obligations she felt and my ongoing requests for more from her. This hurt to hear, but it also confused me. I didn't think I was asking for much. Basic communication, effort, and a sense of mutual investment in our relationship. It wasn't like I was bombarding her with demands or pressuring her in ways that felt unreasonable. In fact, I felt like I'd been walking on eggshells to avoid overwhelming her. Even small requests, like asking her to watch a few of my favorite movies, had been met with resistance. Yet somehow, my attempts to foster connection and communication were being framed as a burden she couldn't bear. Hearing her say all this, I couldn't help but feel that I'd been pouring myself into a relationship with someone who wasn't interested in meeting me halfway. It seemed like she wanted the benefits of being in a relationship without the work or vulnerability that comes with it. I brought up how much work I've put into this relationship. I chauffeured her around for 2 months while her car was in the shop, visited her in the hospital every day and then slept on her couch and took care of her for a week while she recovered from surgery. I've paid for the vast majority of dates, given her money when she overdrew her bank account, helped her move on short notice, and how I've always showed up for her when she's asked, and plenty of times when she didn't. I've also tried to model good relationship behavior, and how exhausting and heartbreaking it is to not have that effort reciprocated. Instead, I rarely got to plan dates or pick what movies/shows we watched due to her refusal to compromise. I put in all of this effort trying to open up to her, and to get her to open up to me. The few times I asked for her emotional support, even on small things like watching Home Alone with me, she refused. She didn't take any interest in my hobbies, even those that we had in common. We had next to no emotional intimacy. And I had to constantly forgive her for blowing up at me for little things, giving me the silent treatment or lying to me, while I always admitted when I was wrong and showed her that I was putting in the work to grow with our relationship. I've been giving so much without getting anything in return, and I didn't feel like my expectations were unrealistic at all. I was asking for the bare minimum. My needs weren't being met. She repeated, once again, that she didn't think our communication styles were compatible. It became clear to me that this was the hill she had chosen to die on to justify ending our relationship. Despite how hurt and tired I felt in that moment, I let her know that I didn't want to end things. I told her I was still willing to work on us, to try harder, to meet her needs if she could just communicate them more openly. I even suggested we see a relationship counselor together, someone neutral who could help us bridge the gaps in our communication and find ways to move forward. But she refused. She said she was too exhausted to continue. She didn't think she could do this anymore. At that point I was exhausted too. All the emotional labor, all the compromise, all the energy I'd poured into trying to keep this relationship alive had left me drained. I realized I couldn't keep fighting for something she wasn't willing to fight for herself. So I agreed to end things. The strangest part was her demeanor throughout the conversation. She never cried or showed much emotion. She alternated between being cold and looking uncomfortable, but there was no sadness, no regret, no visible pain. Meanwhile, I was struggling to keep it together. I didn't yell, raise my voice, or express anger, but I was a mess by the end of it. It felt like the end of something I had invested so much of myself in, and yet she seemed completely detached. In the week following the breakup, I wasn't doing well. My emotions were all over the place, and the weight of everything we'd been through together was overwhelming. One night, in a moment of weakness, I made the mistake of drinking alone at home. In an even worse lapse of judgment, I decided to text her. I asked if she had thought about us, if she was willing to reconsider, if she would at least be open to a conversation. Her response was brutal. She wrote, "Don't contact me. It's not coming across to you, so I'm being explicit. I want nothing from you except to never hear from you or see you again. I'm blocking your number. Contact me again and I'll be getting a restraining order. Go get some help and leave me alone." I was devastated. To have someone I cared about deeply and worked so hard to understand and support respond in such an extreme and callous way was shattering. I've respected her wishes since then and haven't reached out again, but the fallout has been rough. I've been struggling to process everything, how drained and broken I felt throughout the relationship, and now, after the breakup, how much it has amplified my insecurities. It's been painful to reflect on how often I felt unappreciated, undervalued, and dismissed as a partner. I never felt like I was truly respected, prioritized, or even seen by her. It was as though I was a placeholder in her life rather than someone she wanted to build a future with. I've also come to realize how many excuses I made for her during our time together. I attributed so much of her behavior to her childhood trauma and the fact that this was her first serious relationship. I told myself that she just needed time, that her difficulty expressing herself or reciprocating effort was something she could overcome with my support. But looking back, I see that I ignored so many red flags and signs that she wasn't as invested as I was. Some of the things she said during the breakup, the comments about me not being open enough or us not having clear plans for the future, now feel manipulative, even gaslighty. I know they've messed with my head in ways that have been hard to untangle. Coupled with the constant nitpicking throughout the relationship, my self-esteem has taken a significant hit. What's worse is that I've realized I actually felt better after breaking things off with my ex-fiancé, even though that relationship was far more toxic and destructive. There was a sense of closure and relief after that breakup that I don't feel now. With this relationship, I'm left with an overwhelming sense of rejection, inadequacy, and confusion. I'm trying to take things one day at a time, but it's hard. The wounds feel fresh, and I'm grappling with the realization that the person I worked so hard to support and love didn't want to put in the effort to meet me halfway. It's a lonely, disheartening place to be, but I'm holding on to the hope that I'll eventually find peace and clarity. Oh well, guess I have a lot of work to do on myself. I'm sorry that this probably wasn't a satisfying ending. Thank you for listening the story to the end. If you enjoy our videos, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it and hit the notification bell icon to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.